I am a certified sex coach, certified sexologist, and I work one-on-one with people, usually to develop their sexual skills and knowledge, because I find that the largest gap between person and pleasure is education in the middle. And since the advent of technology, we're able to share that information a lot better. So a lot of my specialty is teaching classes. I have a long background in education as well. So, things like blowjobs, vulva pleasure, cunnilingus. I teach a lot of classes on that. A lot of classes about pleasure products and sex toys. That is one of my specialties. And yeah, it's really just whatever comes up. A lot of people who are getting into kink aspects of their life and acceptance around that. And reduced libido is a big topic, of course. There is this variety in the sexual world. And until you explore your own sexual identity, you won't really know enough about it to be able to live your sex life to the fullest. Now, that being said, it's a lot, my global cause, to put it succinctly, is to bring the person back to the bedroom.
Okay, I love that. I love how you said exploring your own sexuality. I want to highlight that because at Live Jasmine, where we're from, that is obviously one of the main things that people come to the platform to do is to explore their sexuality in a way that they just for whatever reason may not feel comfortable to explore with their partner, or maybe they have a fantasy that hasn't been received well in the past, or they're just too afraid to even share it. They try to explore that fantasy with some of the models on Live Jasmine to see, do I even really like this? Do I not? Do I love this? But they have to have the space to figure that out, essentially. And it got me thinking, you know, how many of us in the world in general have truly taken the time to explore our sexuality and to explore our fantasies and to see what we like.
When you don't really explore your body and what feels good to you, you're limiting your identity because you're limiting your curiosity about the most present part of you, your own body. And I think that that's the biggest hurdle that people face just from the get-go is many people are discouraged from touching their own body. I mean, people find it strange or unsettling when you maybe stroke the back of your hand for, self-soothing, or you play with your hair like I'm guilty of for self-soothing, especially in anxious situations. And even if those micro touches, those little micro actions are societally repressed, then the larger actions of pleasuring and exploring your physical body, the thing that you own the most in this world, is completely repressed. And without understanding what parts feel good and listening to that, you have completely shut down a massive part of your personality, your exploration, your identity that's going to impact every aspect of your life.
Absolutely. Very well said.
Thank you.
Very well said. For someone listening who is just like, I don't even know, I think I want to know myself sexually, but I don't even know where to start. What's just a very baseline entry level piece of advice you would give them?
Don't start with the sex. That's where everyone gets caught up is they immediately think I should be, in my bedroom masturbating when that's not really what sex is all about. That's part of it, but it's about that sensual play, as we tend to call it in sexology, rather than foreplay. It's about getting to know yourself and sparking that curiosity. So the first thing I do with my clients that are having a hard time restarting their libido, getting reconnected with their partners, is spend some quality time with yourself. Turn off the podcast, take the headphones out and spend an afternoon doing exactly what you want to do. People have this notion that when you go out in the world by yourself to do a thing you want to do, it's selfish. But there's a concept called self-fullness. And so you are filling your own cup by being selfish. I hate that word. But you walk throughout, the city you live in, you drive your car wherever you want, and you just do exactly what you want. You eat what you want to eat. You go to the museum you've been dying to see. You go and just be who you are and let yourself be curious about what you want. For those who have more time and maybe fewer dependents, get in your car, make sure everything's up to snuff, grab a couple of maps, turn off your phone, and just drive. And turn left when you feel like it, turn right when you feel like it, stop when you want to. These little exercises in personal exploration and being curious about your own desires will play into the bedroom. You're gaining confidence outside to gain confidence inside. So spend some time with yourself.
I think that's one of the best pieces of advice. And again, I really like the distinction that you made between selfishness and you said self-fullness.
Yes. That's not my concept. That is, I can't recall the name of the author, but that is an actual concept that has been written about at length.
Well, no, I think it's important because you're right. Selfish has a very negative connotation to it. And, when you're encouraging a friend to just take care of themselves, you have to say, be selfish, right? Because it's just the only word we kind of have to be like, focus on yourself. But you're right. There's this negative connotation of being selfish, meaning you're almost like doing something wrong to other people or avoiding responsibility. And it kind of points to this other interesting issue we seem to have in regards to sexuality just over society, which is pleasure. There's this I guess discomfort, if you will, over being too pleasure or being too connected to your pleasure and things that really make you feel good and taking care of yourself. Why do you think that is?
There are a lot of reasons. But if you think about it historically, indulgence has always been, and again, that word is a little bit spicy. Indulgence has always been an issue for humanity. I mean, think back to Martin Luther, originally nailing those crimes up on the door and having that concept of being able to pay off your indulgence. Like, what you do to please yourself is worth this amount. And you're equating those two things and you're also seeing them both as negatives. So but it ties down to the little things too. I mean, growing up, you're constantly told, don't do that. That'll, anger your aunt, or da 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 doesn't like that. It's a constant series of indoctrinations into seeing yourself as someone who's just a vessel to take care of others and someone who is a vessel to live their own life. I mean, our parents oftentimes who do the best they can, but they see us as an extension of themselves when we are, in fact, complete other identities that enjoy different things. Like, I know I come from an incredibly conservative family. We don't have a lot in common, but you can break free of those learned behaviors, of those societal expectations, but only if you force yourself. And it is awkward, it is uncomfortable, and there are growing pains. And like all things in life, you kind of have to just power on through.
Being from Live Jasmin, and I've interviewed hundreds of models on Live Jasmin at this point, one of the things that is sometimes it's hard to hear about just how much stigma some of these models face and how much judgment, down to the point of, I mean, some of these models are millionaires from camming. We call them the Jasmin millionaires because, become millionaires from camming. And, to think that someone who's just because they're in this industry, they might have a hard time getting a loan for a house, or they might have a hard time doing something that's very basic.
Adopting children.
You have every right to do this thing, But if and when it somehow comes out that they're part of the adult industry, there is serious backlash and almost like this slap on the wrist in some way for it. Not even to mention, obviously, the interpersonal relationships that are affected. I'm curious your thoughts on this. Have you worked with people who were either themselves part of the adult industry, or maybe they just had a fetish or something that they had to hide because of the stigma around it?
So many times. Yes, that is a very common occurrence, hiding from the stigma. And I mean, there's so many ways to go about that and personal considerations to take into account. It's really hard to fight. I mean, where I live right now, New South Wales in Australia, sex work is legal and it's regulated. But that shame and stigma still exists. For example, if you want to have a sex on premise venue, well, guess what? If you have a disability, tough luck, because it has to be a certain amount of steps, like actual physical stairs from the road. So even those people who are seeking out those services can't access them if they are physically impaired. And that's because we have to say literally out of sight, out of mind. And I think it's going to have to take a much larger change from society as a whole to start really accepting that. And that starts on the micro level of, positivity promotion. I mean, look at the progress that we've made in gender equality and the gender spectrum and getting those other identities not only recognized but celebrated. I mean, if you look at the gay pride movement, that started from those trans people of color really stepping up and stepping out and being heard. And it's going to take, growing pains. It's going to be uncomfortable. But I think that we're at a really good time where society is starting to sort of celebrate and see the individual behind the screen.
Hmm. Yeah, that's very well said. I like how you said growing pains. That's one way to look at it sometimes is these growing pains for the higher good, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for society to accept pleasure, of course, it's going to be an uncomfortable process. But most of life is a bit uncomfortable, and it just starts with each individual. It's like recycling. It doesn't work unless everybody does it. And if everybody starts accepting and celebrating these people becoming millionaires for who they are, that's beautiful. We celebrate influencers. Why can't we celebrate, pleasure influencers?
I love that. I love how you said that. Pleasure influencers. I love that. That's a great term, actually. I'm like, someone, someone do
You
something.
can keep that one.
Yeah, we need to do something with that. I'm curious your thoughts on this because I think about this a lot. Obviously, during the pandemic, every social media platform saw a rise in numbers, but so did the camming industry and the adult industry. And sometimes I think about it, everyone wants to attack the adult industry, but it's a multi-billion dollar industry for a reason. Do you think that that speaks to people's loneliness, or what is it that you think it speaks to with it being so prevalent and so successful? I mean, even the people that are making laws against it are using it, as we know, when things like Ashley Madison got hacked and all of that.
Hmm. I mean, you take every opportunity to grow, right? And I think that COVID really presented us with a unique opportunity to expand as an industry and draw awareness to the fact that people in this industry or wanting or curious about sexual identity are often forgotten about and they don't really have somewhere to go. So platforms like Live Jasmine give them a safe space to explore their identity. And I find that really powerful. I think it speaks to, yes, loneliness, but that's not the word I really want to use. It's more like isolation because those resources are out there, but they're harder to find and they're harder to become a part of and join, like communities, like for example, BDSM communities. Can't really do a whole lot of meet and greets during COVID, but what that caused people to do was expand their mental sexuality in a way and seek out other ways of learning, other ways of exploring, other ways of interacting that really changed the dynamic of sexual interaction in a massive way. And I think that there's, upsides and downsides to every growing pain. But I think overall it'll serve the industry very well because it's drawn a lot of awareness, whether good or bad. You know, no publicity is bad publicity. It's one of those things. And I think that it has brought people together in a big way because they found those communities. And until you are forced by your discomfort to go outside of your zone of comfort, you're not going to do it. So I think it was great.
It's really interesting because speaking of finding your community and your tribe and these online interactions, I've interviewed members who say that they've had this friendship or relationship with a model for 15 years. They have been talking to the same model for 15 years. And I always wonder, okay, how did this happen? What was it about this dynamic and setup that a 10-year, 15-year, and I've heard of a 20-year relationship was born? And these men have, some of the members have gone on to get married, have families, but they see the model as a friend or maybe someone that got them out of a dark time or a hard time. And they still will log on to see her. And actually, you have a really unique bit of a story that you shared in the sense that you kind of did the online communication and dating with your now husband. See, husband?
Soon to be next year.
Okay. So your now fiance. I'm curious to hear from you. What is it that you think this digital communication and connection is? It seems like there's something special about it.
When building a relationship in general, whether it's with, a person you've met, to date or a person working in the adult industry, everybody is still a person. And I think that there is an intense vulnerability when you are face to face. And when you just put it onto a little tiny screen, it seems almost less intimidating. So, for example, like with my couples, what I recommend is, when you first get together, have that conversation about expectation of communication. How often are you going to text? How often are you going to call? What do both people think independently? And then what is the compromise you make together? And doing an exercise like that is terrifying face to face, especially just having that conversation with that person. But when you can just swap the text real quick while you're on the phone, it's a little bit less scary to share your personal thoughts and feelings. And I think that's one of the things about the models online and the women or people in the camming industry is that you can be vulnerable with them in a completely different way because they're not going to judge you as much. And even if they do, guess what? You click block and you move on with your day. You find someone else to communicate with. And it's not until you find that intense connection where you feel really seen and heard and understood that you're going to get the benefits of the relationship and that you're going to keep connecting with that person. Connection is connection at the end of the day. And also sex and, an intimate relationship don't always have to go hand in hand. Plenty of people are in sexless relationships, but they still love their partner. And plenty of people are in the camming industry and have that connection to that person and experience pleasure from that person, but don't necessarily have those same romantic feelings. Those things can be separate.
Very interesting. Yeah, I do agree with you that there is something about that. I don't know what it is, but it's like this less risk or something or less intensity that allows someone to be more vulnerable. And that openness, that more openness, it just creates a deeper bond. I also think using the cam, the model and member example specifically, when you're speaking to someone about things that are very intimate, like your fantasies or your sexuality, it just almost immediately, I think, bonds you to them because we have so few people in life and in general that we can talk about those things with, most people at least.
Yeah. Well, and I like to think there's five types of intimacy, right? Just like the love languages, you fall for some are more important to you than others. And for those who experience that intimacy with a person online, it's not necessarily the physical intimacy that bonds them together, but it's the other four types that really help develop the relationship and create that substantial human to human bond that creates the longevity that you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. I've really tried to study this because when I hear of relationships that lasted 15 and 20 years, and this person is married, but still so connected and bonded to the model that they talk to, I just am so curious about what it was that bound them together, you know?
Well, and then there's also the dynamic of if the person is being paid to have those communications, there's a safety in that. It's like a type of therapy without the stigma of therapy. And it's like having a really close friend, but you know they have to listen to you. So that's great. And you can finally just, again, coming back to indulgence and being self-full. You can ask for the help and be like, hey, I'm struggling with, my workload right now. And that person's going to give you attention and you're guaranteed to get that connection to some degree instead of having the laborious process of going to a therapist's office or something like that. The digital platform allows me to connect with my clients all over the world, and it removes that whole barrier of being terrified to be there in person and being able to be in your comfort zone, your own home, and be who you are. Again, identity coming all the way back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's no secret that CAM models play a role of pseudo therapists, and
Mhm.
they're not therapists technically, but they do similar things in that they listen a lot. And so
Mhm.
I think that even unbeknownst to them, they're using some of these models for those purposes of being heard, having it be their time. Because you're right.
Mhm.
When you're having a session or you're having a therapy session and this is my time to just say whatever I need to say and unload. It is just the best, right?
It's so important because you don't feel like you have to ask how the other person is. You don't feel like you owe them something because you're already paying them. So you're good. You get to take care of yourself. And if that's with a certified therapist or with, a CAM person, it's beautiful all the same. You get to have space to be heard. And that's where we all struggle so much is we're just trying to be heard. That's why there's Facebook. That's why there's Instagram, Twitter. We're trying to get our voice out there. And being heard by just one person can be really validating in so many ways.
Oh my goodness, that is so true. Seriously, it only takes one person to give you that feeling that you're needing, that so many people are craving. They're craving a sense of feeling heard and seen.
Someone you trust, it's someone that's there for you. And that's amazing that people can have that connection. I mean, hopefully it has really real benefits in the mental health community. And I really think it could if people stop seeing them as these cam people as some other and start seeing them the way they should be as human beings who are there to help and want to help. That's, an innate human desire a lot of the time is to help others. And that's what they're doing. It's not just about the sex, it's about the person in the sex.
I'm curious your thoughts on this. Sex work, adult work is one of the oldest professions, as we know. Where do you think the world would be if we didn't have it at all? Not at all.
Well, I don't know that society would have progressed as much, that's for sure. Um, Gosh, that's a really deep question with so many implications. I mean, sex work is one of the few things that unites every country, every identity. There is some form of sex work going on, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And I think that it's that intense bonding, that shared experience. Because if you think back in antiquity, you're on an old sailboat, you're going across the ocean, you meet a new culture, and you get to meet those people in that culture, get a little spicy. And that creates offspring of different skin tones. It creates a unique bond with that moment. And I think that globalization, the drive would have been a lot less intense if there wasn't that sort of global curiosity and that global market that brings everyone together.
Absolutely. I always think, you know what? We would be in trouble, I think, if
Yes.
sex work went away or if it wasn't here, because so many people that are making very serious decisions in this world are relaxing through it, to be honest. They're
Hmm.
getting calm enough to do whatever they need to do. And who knows how crazy they'd be if they weren't having that outlet, that stress outlet. I
Hmm.
don't know.
I agree. And I just like to bring things back to visibility of minorities. So people with physical or emotional like disabilities or challenges, they know that they can go down that avenue and they can seek that pleasure and there's no judgment. They're in a safe space. They get what they need and they can push beyond that one boundary of maybe, same sex connection, opposite sex connection, whatever it may be. And they can push out and they can develop their personality because this roadblock is out of the way.
Right. And I know you said at the start of the call, if we don't have connection to exploring ourselves intimately and sexually, it doesn't allow us to fully develop our personality and self.
Exactly. And, people on for example, the autism spectrum, they still have sexual needs regardless of their, societally perceived ability. And they should have every access to that. And that's what, the cam girl industry or cam people, apologies, the cam people industry is amazing for is they have that access and they get that same development that has been denied to that population for so long.
Fascinating and true. Yes. Is there any recurrent block to healthy sexuality that you see in multiple clients?
Yes, there are several. But I would say one of the most popular ones or most common ones, at least with male-bodied people or people who own penises that are, cisgendered males, um, it's just issues about their penis, its size, its hardness, their ability to get erect in a split second, those porno expectations that we're finally unveiling around female-bodied people or vulva owners. The visibility for the male-bodied people isn't really happening. And those same expectations of, it's got to be, 8 or 9 inches, it's got to be thick, it's got to be rock hard and instant, it's got to stay that way, it's got to last all night. We're not having that unveiling of, oh, these are unfair to them too. And I think that that needs to be talked about more because it takes two to tango. And if one has a lot of the societal expectations stripped, why shouldn't the other? And I think that that causes so much anxiety for these penis owners that it represses their sexuality and they don't reach out for help or for connection because they're ashamed that they don't have, this adult actor's 9-inch schlong. A lot of my clients prefer the vernacular. So,
It's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually a really great point.
and I mean, same thing with vulva owners. I mean, those people aren't aware of, the clitoris is an entire organ and female or clitoral erections and that process, let alone vaginal tenting. But they also expect the penis owning partner, assuming it's a heteronormative relationship going on, they assume their penis owner just know everything about sex. well, they've been watching porn since they were 11, so they should know how to please my bits, bobs, and pieces. Just inherently, I shouldn't have to communicate that. And until both sides are seeing each other as, oh, we both have bad information, until we have that visibility on both sides, it's not going to go as far as we want it to.
It's interesting because speaking of like that communication, that coming together and explaining, oh, because even just something as simple as really taking the time to explain what you want and need or like would solve a lot of that because someone would know what to do.
I would have almost no clients.
But I think too, kind of going back to these online and digital relationships, that, you know, you kind of have to explain what it is you're wanting and needing. Otherwise, there's not even a chance that anything's going to happen or get close. And so
Mhm.
that level of communication, again, you have to be clear. And so I think that's part of the reason these really communicative, long lasting relationships get formed because they're going to a place that some married couples don't go, you know?
Mhm. Well, and I think to the married couples point, that's why you should keep sexting. Now, I know that sounds counterintuitive to people who have been in relationships with their partner for 10 or 15 years, but when you sext, you're forced to put the things you want into words, and your partner has to read them. And it's a way of easily communicating exactly what you want them to do in the bedroom. And guess what? Then they know. All the veils are, and you're both ready and primed to go when that time comes. You know exactly how to please each other. And without that use of specific language, you're not going to get what you need 90% of the time, 99% of the time. And that's one of the great things about messaging with these cam people online is you get that practice. And then you can practice with them, you can make the mistakes with them. Again, they're getting paid, and then you know what to say to your partner a little bit more. And it helps create that balance and those lasting relationships on both sides because it's that vulnerability.
Yeah, and you're dealing with a professional that will coach you and tell you, you know what I mean, what to do.
Yeah.
A lot of models have told me that they'll kind of tell their members how to talk to someone and what to say and what someone would like and what they would like and kind of giving them that type of advice if they're not experienced. And the models are the professional. They are the ones that engage in this daily and constantly. And so absolutely it's wonderful practice.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
If you could give one message to everyone in the world about their sexuality that you don't think the world is quite getting right now, what would the message be?
There is more to learn. Because so many people think, oh, I got sex ed in elementary school. I know everything about it. Or I watched porn again since I was 11. I know everything about it. There's so much more. I've been studying for, after 12 years, I stopped counting. I've been studying sex dedicatedly for 12 years plus, and I learn something new every day. And for people to tell me, oh, yeah, 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 I know that. I know that. It's so reductivist. And it really just, it makes our profession harder because everyone thinks they know everything. And there's so much more to learn. Be vulnerable, accept you don't know it all, and keep exploring.
I think that is the perfect message. There's more to learn. No, really, that is so true. There's always more to learn, even about yourself, and your own, like you said, our own sexualities. I'm sure there's infinite amount of knowledge for us to learn and explore ourselves.
Absolutely. So much more. I mean, I learn about a new kink at least once a week, and I'm like, ooh, that's pretty. I like that one.
Yeah, that's exciting. It's exciting when you think about it. A whole new way to get to know yourself.
Exactly.
Is there anything about human connection, human sexuality, the digital age, camming or sex work that we have not touched on, but you want to share?
Yes. Long distance relationships, pleasure products, all of these things together, camming people. use technology to your advantage. There are so many. I brought a few pleasure products here that, connect via Bluetooth app so you can share pleasure no matter where you are in the world with someone you care about, someone you're working with, whatever. But use the technology and invest in a piece of technology. It's like a computer. Don't look at a vibrator as a throwaway purchase. Invest in something that is quality, that is safe. Please put your safety first and read the box and read the articles and know what you're buying, because so many toys are unregulated. All toys are unregulated, but there are huge safety concerns when it comes to pleasure products. Do your research, buy something high quality, and invest in that long distance pleasure.
I love it. Okay, so one more follow-up question to that.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts in general around sex tech?
Oh, I love it. It's such a fun field. I love pleasure products in general. Like I said, that's one of the things I spend so much time on. But with sex tech comes responsibility. And I really think that the whole industry needs a great deal more oversight. I know that's not great for people who run, small workshops creating ceramic dildos or something like that. But since it's an unregulated industry, so many of the materials out there are toxic, porous, and harmful to your physical body and can cause lifelong repercussions. But people expect to get, the $10 butt plug, and they don't want to spend $100 on it. But if you flood the market with more $100 options, guess what? The price comes down and people aren't using the toxic $10 one. They have a toy that'll last 10 years. I mean, $10 a year is not a whole lot for a butt plug, if you ask me.
Yeah, that is something you didn't say it, but it's connected to it. Is when we drive things underground, we always create more issues and safety issues, even industries. That's why
Mhm.
even something like camming or whatever the case is, sex toys, the more we stigmatize it and drive it down, the more dangerous it gets. So if we want it to be safer, and I think we can all agree in general that that is what we want. Maybe that's why we don't like these things, because we are viewing them as not safe. If we want
Mhm.
things to be more safe, then it should be regulated. It should be well seen on top and not, underground and sparse. And it's just that's when it's not safe.
Exactly. I want, FDA labels on my dildo saying like this is food grade or medical grade silicone, stamp of approval. There needs to be that one until that oversight starts to exist in the pleasure product industry, no one's really safe. And everyone should, I believe, play with sex toys and play with their pleasure and experiment through those avenues. But I feel like even with my closest friends who want to buy a pleasure product, I have to teach my 28-page guide available on my website about sex toy safety. And there's so much to know, and it shouldn't be the consumer's responsibility anymore. I think that that needs to be displaced onto actual regulation.
Absolutely. And to follow that up, my final question to you would be, what would you say are our next steps in creating a more sexually healthy society?
I hate to start here, but I have to get tested. Get STI tested, especially, I mean, living in Australia, there's an outbreak of syphilis right now, and it's 2023. Why is syphilis still a problem? These things, we can eliminate a lot of these diseases. We can eliminate a lot of these infections if we all just start, again, caring about our sexual identity and our sexual parts of our body and seeing them as equally necessary to take care of as, say, your thigh gap or something. Start prioritizing your sexual health and normalize that conversation with your friends, your family. Talk about if your doctor gives a really bad pap smear and it was uncomfortable. Go to a better one next time until you start normalizing things like getting your free testosterone tested at your urologist. No one's going to be talking about, inorganic causes for erectile dysfunction. Start with your health and go from there. Once you know that everything is up to snuff, then please just you have the room, you have the breathing space, you have the safety, and you can be who you want to be and who you really are authentically.
Very well said. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been very, very fun. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Okay, good. Yeah, that makes me happy to hear.
If we can talk about kinks and how everyone should be jealous of people with kinks. If you don't have a kink or a fetish of any kind, that's totally fine. I celebrate you too. But if you think about it like this, when you're in, primary school, you want to fit in. You want to be just like everybody else, and you don't want to stand out at all. And so you don't explore your identity. You do what everyone else is doing. Well, the same sort of principle applies to sex. And when you get older, you have passions, you're interested in something, follow a hobby, you're into beekeeping or whatever. Kinks are the exact same thing. You start off in missionary and then you find out you like purple latex on a Wednesday. And it's those people that have experimented enough to find out they like purple latex on a Wednesday that should be your inspiration. They shouldn't be the outlier. They are the ones you should be envious of because they know what they like. What do you like?
Would you say that most people, or maybe even all people, maybe not, but most people have innate fantasies somewhere inside of them and they just are undiscovered, if you will?
Well, maybe just undiscussed. I'm going to tell you that probably most of those people are masturbating to those fantasies, but they're not sharing them. And when you start sharing them, you find communities, you find like-minded individuals, you find people who share the same kink, and then you form sexy relationships together. There's so many opportunities when you explore and you're honest with yourself and you just accept that you're into that thing.
Amen.